Pete, we can't hear you right now.
Oh, that's what it is with the mute button. Okay. Okay, thank you for coming, everyone. To make sure you're in the right place, this is the Rule Advisory Committee first meeting for Division 90. Division 90 rules are the rules that establish the standards and procedures for making jurisdictional determinations. They establish the minimum standards for wetland delineation reports submitted to the department, and they explain the review and approval process for those reports. So that's what we're going to be doing here. And my name is Peter Ryan, and I am the wetland aquatic resource specialist at the Department of State Lands. And I was given the task of heading this rulemaking for the department. And we also have with us Danielle Boudreau, and Danielle will introduce herself now.
Hi, everyone. As he said, I'm Danielle Boudreau. I'm the agency's rulemaking coordinator. So I'm here for any rulemaking questions, and I'll be present at all the RAC meetings.
And after Danielle, we have Lynn McAllister.
Lynn, you're muted, Lynn.
Did it again. I'm Lynn McAllister, jurisdictional coordinator. I'm in the Midwest region, formerly in the Southwest region. I've worked here for about 15 years and have gone through a couple other Division 90 rulemakings. And I was just involved as we edited the former version, which we'll get into in future meetings, but and I'll be more involved in the future meetings, not so much today, but anyway, just a member of the wetlands team here. And pass it on to Steve.
Great, thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Pete and Danielle. My name is Steve Faust. I work for a firm called 3J Consulting in Beaverton. I'm a land use planner and public involvement specialist, and I'm happy to be your facilitator for this meeting and the next few that follow for this process. Just a note for anyone who didn't see, this meeting is being recorded. Want everyone to know that. And let's go ahead and move into introductions for the group. I'm going to go off the list I have here, which looks to be alphabetical. So it starts with Alan. Alan, you're on mute. Alan, I think you're muted.
Hold on. Hi, I'm Alan Martin. I am a wetland consultant. I have a company, Geo Resources.
Welcome. Ed.
Yeah, I'm Ed Strohmeyer, and I'm with Tetra Tech in Portland.
Thank you, Ed. Things are moving around. Jessica.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jess Salgado, a jurisdiction coordinator for DSL. I cover the whole Central and Eastern Oregon.
Thank you. Jerva.
Jevra.
Sorry, Jevra. I misread. I apologize. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Okay, I'll just keep going here. Jody.
Hello, my name is Jody Forgione. I work for Schott and Associates, and we're wetland consultants.
Thank you for being here, Jody. Katie.
Hi, my name is Katie Ryan, and I am with the Wetlands Conservancy.
Welcome. Lauren.
Hi, I am Lauren Poor. I am the Director of Government and National Affairs at the Oregon Farm Bureau.
Welcome. Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt Unitas. I'm a jurisdictional coordinator at the Department of State Lands. I cover Southwestern Oregon.
Thank you. Reed.
I think you mean me, Stacy Reed.
Oh, Stacy Reed. Sorry.
That's okay. I figured it out. Stacey Reed with AKS Engineering and Forestry. We're wetland consultants. Great to see everybody.
Thank you, Stacy. Samantha.
Everyone, I'm Samantha Bear. I'm the Housing Program Director for the Oregon Home Builders Association.
Great. And then we'll try Jevra again. All right. And then we have someone on the phone with the last 4 digits, 3641. Okay. Jevra, are you able to introduce yourself? Okay, looks like that is not going to happen. So let's just keep on moving and go to our agenda for the day. Next slide. There we go. So in just a moment, well, right now we're going to go over the, oh, skipped ahead. There we go. We'll walk through the agenda here. Next up, we'll just talk briefly about some Zoom protocols. And then Danielle is going to walk us through the rulemaking process and the Rulemaking Advisory Committee operating procedures and role. Then Pete is going to take us through the rulemaking purpose and scope of what we're going to be doing. And then we'll wrap things up with just a summary of any key points from today and our next steps. And we'll do a little polling to see if we can't identify a date for our next meeting. And I'll just say today's meeting is primarily informational, really kind of setting the stage for more substantive discussions at our next meeting. So that's what we're trying to accomplish today. Let's go to the Zoom protocols. Okay, so I think most people have themselves on mute. We appreciate that. If you have something to say, question or comment, please raise your hand. For those who don't use Zoom as much, you should see an icon at the bottom of your screen that says reactions. And when you click on that, there's a variety of emojis, but there's also one button that says raise hand. For those who are participating by phone, if you press *9, it should work the same way to raise your hand. I'll do my best to track hands raised and call on everyone in turn. And then, just ground rule wise, all we ask is that everyone be respectful of each other's opinions and comments throughout the process. And we really appreciate all of you participating on this committee. If you have any problems technically, please send Pete or me a message in the chat, and we'll do our best to address that. And with that, I think it's time to hand things over to Danielle.
Yes. So first, I'm going to go over our rulemaking process. So for rulemaking, the need for rule revisions is established and proposed changes are drafted. And depending on statutory authority, the approval to initiate rulemaking will either lie with the state board, the state land board, or with the department. And for the Division 90 rules, the statutory authority lays with the department. So this won't be going to the state land board. Once we've established that the need for rule revisions, the department convenes a rulemaking advisory committee, and the advisory committee will draft the rule, will review the draft rules and approve those. They'll also review the draft need for the rules, the fiscal impact statement, and the racial equity statement. And those are needed for the notice of proposed rulemaking, which is published by the Secretary of State in the Oregon Bulletin. And once the notice is published, a public comment period is open for 30 days following the publication. And we'll hold a public rule hearing approximately 15 days after the notice is published. So that rule hearing will be during the public comment period. And once our public comment period is closed, we will present the proposed rules to either the state land board or the department's executive director for final approval. And like I said, the Division 90 rules will be going to the executive director for approval. And once we have approval, we file those rules with the Secretary of State so that the changes become permanent. Are there any questions about the rulemaking process? I did a very basic review. All right. Seeing no questions, and you can always ask later if you have more questions. All right, so now I'll go over our RAC operating principles and procedures. So the purpose and roles, the duties and responsibilities of the RAC members are to advise the department on rule amendments to OAR 141-090, which are the Wetland Delineation and Determination Report, the rules that guide those. The group is an advisory board, and the role is to provide advice and frame policy choices. RAC members are expected to attend and participate in meetings, to study available information and provide input, and to consider a range of issues and options in order to address those, discuss the pros and cons, and seek to develop recommendations. The responsibilities of the members are to review background materials to understand the issues for discussion at RAC meetings. And in this case, most of the background materials will be the draft rule language. We also expect the RAC members to work collaboratively with one another to explore issues and develop recommendations, and to consider the perspectives and input of other stakeholders and the public, including those in recommendations as appropriate. So membership in terms of service. The group membership in term of service is at DSL's discretion. Membership is intended to represent a diversity of expertise, skill sets, and viewpoints, and members may be represented by alternates and must provide notice to the rules coordinator, rules writer, or facilitator at least 24 hours before the meeting. So if for some reason you can't attend the next meeting and you would like to send somebody in your place, just let us know. And so our tentative schedule of meetings, which we'll go over, Steve will touch based on our next two meetings later. Our first meeting is today, October 20th, 2022. And the purpose is to review the RAC role and purpose, the rulemaking process, any background information, and the project purpose and scope. So like Steve said earlier, today's meeting is more informational than anything. Our second meeting, which we're hoping to have in early November, the purpose of that meeting will be to review and provide recommendations on the draft rules. And our third meeting, which we're hoping to have in mid-November, is to review and provide recommendations on the draft fiscal impact statement, the racial equity statement, and the summary of rulemaking. And if necessary, if we need to have a fourth meeting, it will be held in early December. But right now we're anticipating 3 meetings total. So the role of the department is to provide technical and administrative support, information, institutional knowledge, and expertise and advice to the RAC. And we're responsible for scheduling meetings, preparing meeting summaries, and maintaining a public record of the RAC process. The role of the facilitator is to ensure a safe, welcoming environment where all members can participate, conduct meetings to foster collaborative decision-making and consensus building, distribute meeting summaries that outline the topics discussed, the areas where there is agreement, and any remaining issues on which agreement was not reached. The facilitator will not act as an advocate on behalf of any issue, interest group, or member. And while the facilitator may make recommendations regarding the process, they will not make any substantive decisions. The facilitator will provide coordination between meetings, serving as the primary communicator between RAC members and between the RAC and the department. Any information disclosed in confidence to the facilitator will be kept confidential by the facilitator, though written communications may be subject to public records law. RAC members are encouraged to approach the facilitator if or when procedural issues arise. So we do have interested parties, which are other individuals from DSL who've joined us today. And interested parties are individuals or organizations who want to stay informed about the rulemaking process. And they may include department employees and external stakeholders who are providing technical feedback. Interested parties are non-voting advisors and may provide written feedback after the meeting. Do I have any questions so far? Sorry, I realize I haven't stopped yet to see if anybody had any questions.
And Danielle, just a note for everyone, we will be sending out this PowerPoint as a PDF after the meeting.
Yeah.
So, no need to take thorough notes right now.
Yeah, sorry. I meant to mention that at the beginning, is that you will be getting a PDF that has a little bit more detail about the operating principles and procedures. So our operating procedure protocols. Members agree to act in good faith through all aspects of the RAC process, attend all meetings, direct any requests for information made outside of meetings to the designated contacts, be respectful of other members, interested parties, staff, and members of the public, make every effort to address their concerns with the group. Members also agree to ensure any written communications regarding the RAC or rulemaking process are mindful of these procedural ground rules and are respectful, even if highlighting different perspectives. Generally defer to DSL for all media communications related to the group's process and recommendations, and represent only their own perspective in interviews unless otherwise discussed with the group or DSL. And to raise all concerns, especially those being discussed for the first time at RAC meetings and not in or through the media. And while we have these bullets about media communications, we're not expecting there to be any anything big that comes out of these. These are procedural rules. So this is just standard operating procedures for all of our RACs. So for our operating procedures, we'll have a consensus model to be used to facilitate decision-making and ensure the RAC benefits from the individual views, experiences, background, training, and expertise of the members. Consensus is a participatory process where the RAC members strive for recommendations that they can accept, support, live with, or agree not to oppose. Expectations for the decision-making process include that members agree on the value of consensus. The group should strive to achieve it. As such, recommendations will be made by consensus of all present members. Members agree to compromise and work together to find workable solutions in the commitment to achieving consensus. Those with differing recommendations are responsible for proposing alternative solutions or approaches to resolve differences. Meetings will be conducted in a way that fosters collaborative decision-making and consensus building. Members will honor decisions made and avoid reopening issues once resolved. And when consensus cannot be reached, the facilitator may invite documentation of differing opinions or viewpoints. Any questions? No? Okay. So public meetings and records. I mentioned earlier that certain things could be subject to public records and that members of the public may be joining. So I'll go over that a little bit more. RAC meetings are considered public meetings and are open to the public. So anyone who joins from the public, again, would be considered an interested party and a non-voting advisor. RAC members should be advised that all rulemaking records, including formal documents, rule drafts, meeting summaries and exhibits, meeting recordings and communications are public records and may be released in response to a public records request. Communications refer to all statements and votes made during meetings, memoranda, work projects, emails and correspondence, and documents or materials developed to fulfill the goals of rulemaking. So that concludes the RAC operating procedures and principles. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask now or later.
And I should say, thank you, Danielle. The agenda we sent out has contact information for both Pete and me. Feel free to copy both of us if you have any, follow-up questions by email. Pete's certainly more of the technical expert, and I'll be handling more of the procedural end of things. But if you think of questions after the meeting, feel free to ask at that time. So if there's no questions about the procedures and protocols, I forgot to mention at the beginning of the meeting that we likely wouldn't be using the full 2 hours. So usually no one complains about that. So we're moving through things pretty quickly here. And
Yeah, I went quicker than I thought.
that's all right. And we also have had no questions so far. So let's move on to the rulemaking purpose and scope from Pete.
Okay, and I just remembered to unmute myself. Did that work? Yeah, good. Okay. Okay, the purpose and scope of this rulemaking effort. The last time these rules were updated was 2013, and that's almost been 10 years ago. And a little background I dug into, these rules were first certified in 2001. They were again updated in 2004, once again in 2008. And I think that was to add, references to using the supplements for delineations. And then finally, last in 2013, and we think that was to put in the independent review panel that we're going to talk about later. Another reason for this rulemaking, other than the age, is that our aquatic resource coordinators at DSL, those are the folks that help people go through the removal field permitting process. They needed more information for their permits. And so they asked the jurisdiction coordinators to collect and review this information prior to them receiving the permit application, just to kind of speed things along. And then finally, these rules are almost 10 years old and they need a lot of general housekeeping, cleanups, and editing. Next slide, please. Okay, more specifically, some of the changes are going to include, the big ones are going to include removing all references to the independent review process. That is because that legislation sunsetted January 2nd of this year. So it's already not been usable since then, but it's still in our rules. So we have to do rulemaking to remove it. We are adding new requirements for, this is part of that aquatic resource coordinator request, to add information describing coordinate classes, HGM classes, aquatic resources of special concern types that might be found on a site, identifying any compensatory wetland mitigation sites that may be present on a site, and identifying wetlands below ordinary high water when they meet the criteria that DSL is suggesting through guidance need to be met. Okay, the next one, we're adding requirements. Oops, sorry, previous slide, other side. Okay, we're adding new requirements for submitting GIS data for delineation mapping. We've added 6 new definitions to the definition section of the rule to help explain some of the wording we put in other parts of the rule. And we're doing, once again, that general cleanup all through it, which is changing us to those and stuff like that. Okay, next slide. Okay, the new definitions that we're adding, just to be specific, we're adding one for aquatic resources of special concern. And it's very similar to the definition in Division 85, which is the removal fill rules. We've also added definitions for fill and for removal, and those are also both from Division 85. We've added a definition for GIS. It seems self-explanatory for most people, but since we're using the acronym, we thought we'd define it. We're adding a definition for SWI, which is the State Wetlands Inventory. We're adding this because there's discussion in the rule about, we're proposing in the rule to change the use of inventories that we talked about previously, which was National Wetland Inventory and local wetland inventories, to just using the statewide wetlands inventory because it includes both in the mapping. And we've also added a definition for uplands just because that came up in one of our descriptions and we had to define it. Some of the cleanups and edits we're including, for examples, are we used the word parcel in the previous rule and that caused confusion for some people. So we changed it to tax lot or tax lots. We're substituting SWI for all other inventories, like I just said, that are mentioned in the previous rule. We're suggesting changing the word precision to accuracy because that seemed to make more sense for most of the people we were trying to communicate with. And we added one additional reason for rejecting a submission. Those are the big ones.
Can I chime in, Pete? I think we changed accuracy to precision.
No.
You sure? Okay.
Yeah. It was precision and we changed it to accuracy.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong.
I just wanted to add something about the independent review and tell folks that we never had a use for that. Nobody ever used it in 10 years. So we didn't see any reason to continue with it.
Okay, that's it for that slide then. I think we're
Okay. Any questions for Pete about the scope of what we're going to be covering? As we mentioned, after this meeting, in addition to the PowerPoint presentation, we'll be sending out the track changes version of Division 90 so that you have time to review it before our next meeting. And speaking of our next meeting, let's go to the next slide here. We have some options here, and as long as we have most of you in the room, we're going to pull up some Zoom polls for these next two meetings and try to get dates on the books. So if everyone could go ahead and answer the poll.
And just for reference, you can choose multiple options for each meeting choice.
Thanks, Danielle. Hopefully people have their schedules handy.
I do have a quick question. This is Stacy.
Go ahead,
Are
Stacy.
you looking for input just on your proposed changes, or are you looking for input on things additional? So, not just the things that Pete presented, but some suggestions like additional suggestions?
Go ahead, Pete.
That's a good question, Stacy. Yeah, I would be willing to hear him.
Okay.
And see what the group thinks.
Okay.
All right, the responses are rolling in. While people are taking that poll, I don't think there's any problem with, just saying, in terms of next steps, we'll get hopefully the poll results help us get the next two meetings scheduled. As I mentioned, following the meeting, I'll be sending out a PDF of the PowerPoint presentation, as well as the rules in track changes for you to review. Then in the next few days, we'll prepare a meeting summary. This one is likely to be very brief, but these protocols will continue going forth. A few days after each meeting, we'll provide a meeting summary and a link to the meeting recording for people who aren't able to make it to meetings, so they can get caught up on what they missed. And then a few days prior, we'll send out a calendar invite for the next two meetings. And then a few days prior to each meeting, we'll send out an agenda for that meeting. Any questions about next steps or consensus decision-making or any other technical questions for Pete or procedural questions for Danielle? All right.
Just as a reminder, if you're unable to attend a scheduled meeting, feel free to nominate an alternate to attend in your place. They'll be expected to follow those principles and procedures or the protocols that I went over today.
And just let us know. I think it's within 24 hours before, at least 24 hours from the meeting, that you'll have someone going in your place. Just so everyone knows, right now the poll, I don't know if people can see the results, but it looks like November 1st in the afternoon has the most positive responses. And then the 15th and the 16th in the afternoon, both it looks like work for everyone. So we'll just have to pick one of those two, Pete and Danielle. Do we have enough, Danielle? Are you able to record the poll there?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and end the poll.
Okay. Well, I'll just say we moved through things much quicker than anticipated. We thought we'd be closer to an hour, but it sounds like no one has any questions, and we haven't, other than Pete's overview, we haven't really started diving into the details. So we look forward to a more engaged and interactive second meeting where we'll start having discussion about the specific changes. So if there are no other questions, thank you everyone for your time this morning, and we look forward to meeting with you in a few weeks.
Yes, thanks everyone.